Hello and welcome to this video, which will deal with the topic of discourse markers. These are important words which help you to build spoken fluency. First of all, let's think about word classes. In all languages, there are some important word classes. The major classes of words are verbs. For example, in English, go, eat, sleep, take, and so on. Nouns, house, sky, dog, money. Adjectives, words like big, fast, red, wonderful. Adverbs, words like slowly, well, abroad, later. Prepositions, these are words that we use to describe place and time. To, in, on, at, by, and all of the other ones. Now, there are other words and multi-word expressions that do not fit neatly into these categories. Today, we will look at another category of words. These are discourse markers. These are an important part of spoken language. Discourse markers are words and expressions such as, well, you know, I mean, actually, like, you know what I mean, and so on. There are lots and lots of discourse markers in English. Some of them are more casual, some of them are more formal. Some of them are more used in spoken language, and some of them are more used in written language. Today, we're focusing on spoken language discourse markers. In the past, these words were sometimes dismissed as meaningless fillers. Teachers thought that these words were not necessary for students to learn. They had no meaning, they were kind of empty. It is true that these markers, these discourse markers, usually do not change the basic meaning of a sentence. So if I use a discourse marker, or if I don't use a discourse marker, the basic meaning of what I say will be about the same. But these discourse markers, they do have functions in speech that help to manage the conversation, to show the speaker's attitude, to introduce extra information, and so on. There are several different functions that discourse markers provide. Discourse markers are important for fluency. Using discourse markers is one of the signs of a fluent speaker, using them automatically. Let's look at some of the features of discourse markers in English. These words are some of the most frequent words and expressions in spoken English. If you listen to native English speakers talking, you will hear these words used a lot. They are very, very frequent and common in spoken language. They're usually spoken a little more quickly and a little more quietly than the other words. For example, we don't say, I mean, we might say, I mean. And we don't say, well, we might say, well. And we don't say, you know, we might say, you know. They're often said quite quickly compared to the other words, and usually a little bit more quietly. Discourse markers often have several functions. It's hard to say this marker means this thing, or this marker has this function. They often have several different functions. If discourse markers are missing from your conversation, the conversation can sound a little unnatural. So even if your vocabulary and grammar is quite good, if you do not have discourse markers, then your speaking might sound a little bit strange. If your grammar and vocabulary is not perfect, but you use discourse markers correctly and automatically, you will sound more fluent. Discourse markers can often be found in certain locations. When we speak, we can find some discourse markers usually, not always, but usually appear at the beginning of an utterance when you start speaking. Words like well, oh, so, like, these words can often appear right at the beginning of your speaking. Other discourse markers can often appear in the middle position during your speaking. You can use words like I mean, like, you know, during the onset, during the continuing speaking. And at the end, words like you know what I mean, something like that. These can often be found at the end of your speaking. These help to signal that you have finished speaking and the next person can start speaking. Let's look at an example of discourse markers in use. Here is speaker A. What time do you want to meet tomorrow? Speaker B replies, I'm not sure. I might have to work late, maybe about 7:30. I'll call you when I know. This is fine. There's no problem here with the grammar or vocabulary. But there are no discourse markers. Let's have a look at this same conversation using discourse markers. So, like, what time do you want to meet tomorrow? Well, I'm not sure. I mean, I might have to work late, maybe like 7:30, something like that. Anyway, I'll call you when I know. Notice here the words like so and well and I mean and something like that and anyway. These just help the conversation sound a little bit more natural and they have certain functions. Being able to use discourse markers automatically is an important part of fluent speaking. Okay, so please pay attention to your speaking and try to use these words while you're speaking to help shape your conversation and make it more fluent. Thank you very much. Goodbye.